Hello, welcome back to another review on Out on the Line podcast. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week?
Ooh, Jeff, big sweatshirt guys this week. Big hoodie
Damn right.
guys this week. I'm
Damn
noticing
right. Hoodlums, you might call us.
hoodlums running the pod. I am feeling phenomenal. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic, and I am actually very much looking forward to talking about this album that we're going to do this week. And this was as far as in my household, a heavily requested album to talk about on this podcast, as my wife is a huge fan of the pop star Addison Rae. And she came out with an album towards the end of last year called Addison. And it's probably something we should have got to before the Grammys, since it was nominated and she did perform at the Grammys. But we're going to talk about those in a separate podcast. So make sure you folks check that one out as well. But this album by Addison Rae is, I think, was pretty anticipated because she's got a pretty unique story about how she kind of came into pop music in the first place. So I don't know, how much did you know about of her at all, or this album specifically?
Um, did not know that she had made this album until you brought it up. I guess this came out in June. So didn't know she had made her foray into music, and only knew about her because I was fairly certain she was in like one of the Scream movies or something. I know she was on that shitty Ed Gein TV show. And then I obviously knew she was a TikTok. She made her bones, so to speak, on TikTok, doing the dances and the viral what have yous. Um, so not someone that was ever like fully on my radar, but all of this comes with the caveat that I'm not going to sit here and take a dump on TikTok or anything like that. It's not necessarily for me. Like I can't, I prefer the long form stuff, and but I do think that like some people do very useful, interesting, fun things on there, and then some people just record themselves with a look on their face like they just lobotomize themselves with an ice pick. They literally just stand there and like point upwards at a sign that's like my feeling when, and then it's a picture of Patrick Starr's ass cheeks clapping. I don't know what it means, but it's for someone. It has millions of views. I like the cooking tutorials and the furniture restoration. So I'm not here to shit on TikTok, nor is it an illegitimate launch pad for anyone. I just want to get that out of the way. It'd be very easy to be cynical about TikTok, and that would be like a terrible slog for this episode.
Yes, and I think probably now that the ownership of TikTok has changed hands, it might be time to start getting cynical about TikTok. But I agree with you. There's a lot of, if that's the stuff you want to go in there and watch, you'll find a million hours of it. But I for me personally, it's like drain unclogging videos. I don't know if you ever get some of those. Some of them very, very satisfying.
Do I look like I've ever clogged a pipe in my life? Do I look like that kind of guy?
Yeah, maybe once or twice. That one, or like when they break like a beaver dam and the river gets to flow after. Like those are, yeah, I get hype on some kind of TikTok videos. Carpet cleaning videos also fantastic. But Addison Rae, I think, she started on TikTok doing the dances and stuff, and then she kind of got into TV a little bit. So you kind of got a sense that she wanted to use the fame she gained on TikTok to try to do something else. Um, I think with acting, people kind of thought that's the way she was going to go, but I think in her mind, being a like pop star was really what she always wanted to do. And what a lot of people were concerned about, and I think rightfully so, because there's a lot of celebrities that like try to dip their toe into certain kinds of music, and it's very surface level, usually not very good. There's a reason that it's very few people that are famous for being a musician and famous for being an actor. Like it doesn't happen that often because it's hard to do both and do both well. I think there is no doubt about the commitment that Addison Rae has made to becoming a pop star. And I think what this album seemed like to me is her like almost embodying a character, like embodying the character of a pop star. It almost felt like pop music satire by somebody that loves pop music.
I respectfully didn't think it went that it didn't go that deep for me. I think the part you say about there's commitment, I think there's commitment in a lot of facets, and we'll get to that. Um, I agree that it's commitment, and again, to do caveats off the top, it would be very easy beyond TikTok to be cynical about like Addison Rae and who she is, and
Mhm.
we'll just be like talk, paint, you know what I mean? Like say what you mean. Very attractive. That's certainly helpful in the social media game. But that's not me being like, oh, no, it would be easy to be cynical about like, oh, of course, the super attractive girl gets all of the
Mhm.
opportunities. I believe she's a hustler. I do believe that. And I think there was commitment to this 100%. I think her PR team is very committed to being everywhere, making
Yeah.
sure that no one can talk shit about this and that people get incentives to talk well about it. I am not going to be one of those people. With apologies to wife of the pod, I hated this.
Okay.
Hated it. And it doesn't, again, caveats necessary. I do not hate Addison Rae, the person, and I do not hate what she stands for. I think she's great. I saw this video in my research that was like, she's the queen of the rebrand, like the identity pivot, where it's not a radical reinvention like JoJo Siwa, who like came out as gay, but then became a trad wife, and just like it's impossible to follow
Yeah.
the arc. Addison Rae is like business savvy and is media savvy, and you don't get to where she got just by being the hot chick on TikTok. There has to be a strategy somewhere. So, like, all kudos due for that. But as far as a musical album full of music, I hated it.
So that is, I think, where maybe if you go from a different perspective on kind of, I feel like what the album is, it might sound a little different to you. Now, I'm not asking you to like go back and reassess. Like, I'm sure you gave it plenty of a
I'll
chance.
never listen to this again.
But the way that I kind of read it is there was enough moments of like this kind of tongue in cheek where it's like, I know all of these songs sound like the most kind of vapid and shallow thing you've ever heard. But in a lot of instances, I felt like that was the point, and I think what I was expecting versus what was delivered, I think is why my opinion on this album is generally pretty positive. I think there's enough like catchy enough songs in there. I think there's enough almost like throwback moments in there to that nostalgia helps too. That I think, of all these like pop girlies that are out right now, like apparently Addison Rae is looked at as the most similar to like a Britney Spears type, where it's there's something just different about how she get now, whether she ever becomes successful or not. Like, I don't know how you even measure that or whatever, or maybe they're saying that she's as nuts as Britney Spears is now. I don't know what the context necessarily is, but I do hear a lot of that sort of attitude and a lot of that kind of similar production. Like there was a lot of that like very 90s drum and bass kind of production like you would hear in some of those like 90s Cher songs. um there was enough of it, and I guess there was little enough of the album at 33 minutes long. It being as short as it was also certainly helped. um I think for me, this certainly doesn't reach a level of like Dua Lipa Future Nostalgia. This doesn't reach a level of like Sabrina Carpenter's first album or like Chappell Roan. But as far as like a very digestible pop album, I felt like this hit pretty well. And I think and I think the idea that maybe she's like, what I kind of compared it to is like, so you have these days, you have like your Charlie XCX, who's kind of like the out there, like real party girl, like kind of crazy, does the crazy kind of house beats and stuff like that with her music. What, like Mandy Moore was to Britney Spears is like kind of that like second tier. Like to me, that's where Addison Rae kind of fits in. Is to me, she's like that like Willa Ford level, or a Mandy Moore level, where it's like not Christina or Britney, but there's like that secondary tier where it's like, you remember their songs because you grew up in that era, but ask anybody these days, they'll know who Christina and Britney are, but they won't know who the rest are. I think
You're
that's where
putting
we're gonna.
you're putting Willa Ford and Mandy Moore on the same tier.
Yeah, how many of each of their songs can you name?
I can't name a single Willa Ford one. I can name a couple Mandy Moores. Mandy Moore and Jessica Simpson were like B tier.
Okay, I'll give you Jessica Simpson and Mandy Moore instead of Willa Ford.
Okay,
I'll
thank
give
you.
you that. So yeah, I'll give you that. So that's where I kind of see Addison Rae sitting. Like, I don't know, she's obviously never gonna, I don't know that she's getting to a point where she's selling tickets like Dua Lipa or Charlie is, certainly not like Taylor Swift is, but I think she's gonna have herself if she keeps making music like this, it may not totally appeal to us, and it may not totally appeal to people that like have the same kind of musical sensibilities we do, but there is going to be a lot of people at those concerts.
And for the people that like that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing they like, I always say, and that's great.
Well, were there any moments that you did like on the album? Like any spots you could pick out where you
not a single one. I think for me, so if we're going to talk about this 90s aesthetic, I agree that there was a lot of that influence. You could hear a lot of that in the production, like you said, bass and drum.
Mm-hmm.
You hear a lot of moments in the production that harken back to the 90s and the early 2000s, purely imitating that sound and cribbing from that genre the stuff that like kind of sucked about it. Like that stuff wasn't good. Like we hold it on a certain level, but like, was Britney Spears music good, or did Oops, I Did It Again? I'm not, this is not me going to bat for something like Man Child either. You know what I mean? Sabrina Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're just like, when an earworm hits, is it necessarily a good song? Or is it just something that gets like tattooed on your brain and joins the cultural ubiquity? It's like, that would be an interesting episode. Were the 90s actually a good time for music? Was 90s music any good at all? I was in a 90s cover band, and 50% of the stuff we did was shit. And not we did a shit job. We were putting on a clinic in doing shit.
Yeah.
So I would say, if that's the genre you're cribbing from and you're going to be that faithful to it, that's a tough break. I think it's the same thing for people who do 80s music. It's easy to pigeonhole. And so for me, it didn't like there was no like nostalgia feature. Nostalgia was a barrier to entry for me. But I will say those moments were flourishes throughout the album. They weren't necessarily like a feature on every single song all the way through. You say the music is digestible, and I would agree, but so are saltine crackers. And I found this whole thing to be very like, it didn't have a POV. It was thematically bland. The lyrics, I know we're all supposed to hate AI, but I fed the lyrics for a couple of these songs into ChatGPT and said, count for me the total word count, and then give me unique words only. Do not count anything that was repeated.
Mm-hmm.
Like New York, 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 blah, blah, blah. I was like, just break that down for me into a percentage. And basically like 80% of that song is the same handful of words repeated over and over and over again. And that happens a lot on this album. And it's like, the world is your oyster, come taste my pearl, and stuff like that. To me, I didn't get satire. I didn't get Sabrina Carpenter out of that. It felt very unsure. It felt like when you hear someone swear and you're like, you're trying to swear. That's not coming natural to you. You're not a badass. You kind of hesitate. You fuck. Like you can tell when someone didn't really mean it and it's not their personality.
Yeah.
This doesn't seem to be her personality. I don't feel like she's putting on a character. I feel like she's being authentically Addison Rae, and it unfortunately isn't that interesting. That's like the biggest problem with this, is like musically it's not interesting. And I'm not sitting here being a hipster saying, well, it should be more like Fantasyland Codex by Tropical Fuckstorm, or it should be like King Giz. I don't need that, but I need something interesting. I need POV, I need lyrical content, or I need the music and production itself to give me something that keeps me around. Like I can say that for Charlie XCX. Go production triumph. They are, even if they're not my genre, they are bangers. They go all night long and all night strong. And just this just kind of felt like, oh, isn't it nice? My niece is going to be busking outside of Aeropostale. That's what this was the soundtrack to. I'm sorry. That thought just crystallized in my mind right now, but that's what it is. It's what it was to me.
Hey, there's a lot of people that made a living doing shows in malls
and working at Aeropostale. I agree.
There's a lot of people that made a living doing that. Well, there were for me a lot of, it sounds like a lot more positive moments I think the song that she performed at the Grammys, Fame as a Gun, that it's just like a weird schizophrenic like kind of pop song. It's like Charlie XCX light for me is what a lot of these songs ended up sounding like, especially like Aquamarine. And it's like you gotta like the lyrics to Aquamarine. It starts out, what is it? The world is my oyster, baby, come touch the pearl. I mean, it's just like so on the
Yeah.
nose. It can't be anything other than like satire. I mean, like, come on.
I don't
That
even think it's satire though. I think it's just like, well, it worked for other people to it's just it's so blatant. It's not like a clever turn of phrase. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Sabrina Carpenter is blunt about it. I get
yes.
wet at the thought of you. There's not a ton of nuance to that. And that's fine. And I am trying to keep in mind, someone said this, I saw again in my research. Sabrina Carpenter, it took her 5 albums to get to this persona and make it stick and make it work. So you can't
Mhm.
really hold that against Addison Rae because I think she's very young and this is her first effort. So, like, good for her. But I didn't really get satire out of it. I got blunt instruments. Satire, not so much.
Well, we're gonna find out who's correct about the motivations behind this album when it comes eventually time for her to get the to become one of the poet laureates of the United States. And
Yes,
we're
I'm
gonna
sure.
and we're gonna find out who's right and who's wrong about this one, Alex. I promise you that.
I look forward to the day.
well, well, are you thinking it's time to give this a rating? Because I got one in my mind that I'm gonna give this one.
Okay,
And
go
did
for it.
not and you did not sway me. And this well, the rating I give is not going to sound like there's much to sway, but I'm gonna give this one a 6 out of 10. So I enjoyed myself more than I didn't. That's why it got above a 5. And I kind of think about now that we do this sort of rating system, like where would I have put like Chapel Roan, Rise and Fall of the Midwest Princesses? I'd probably have rated that somewhere at 8 or 9. And it's like, should this be a 7? Is it really that close to that? And the answer is no. But I also didn't think it was as bad as a 5, so 6 is where we landed, folks.
Okay. That's some at-home mathematics for you. And that I guess to me is the thing is we are really kind of in like I don't want to be cliche, but like we're in a golden age of pop music, but we are in an interesting age
Mm,
for pop music where people are doing a lot of different stuff and a lot of interesting stuff. You can draw comparisons between people as different as Billie Eilish and Lana Del Rey and God help us Taylor Swift and Sabrina Carpenter and Chapel Roan. And there's, if you like some of these people, if you don't, whatever, for better or worse, there's a lot going on in the genre. And even like stepping outside to something like Olivia Dean, who will be relevant in our little Grammys episode. I look at that and I'm like, that's something that feels classy and self-possessed. Like then you've got another Olivia, which feels like very emotionally connected, and she's kind of like playing in the pop punk realm. So you have a lot of people doing a lot of exciting things, and they're kind of looking not even forward, like this is the future of pop music.
mhm,
They're kind of responding to the moment and putting their own stamp on it. They're not really looking back, except for like the occasional gimmick.
mhm.
And even still, I just don't think the best of them are doing that. I think for Addison Rae on this album to kind of aspire to the 90s, 2000s thing, aim higher. But I also don't think she was capable of higher at this point. She does not really seem to have a good voice, a particularly strong voice.
that's
If we're
that's gonna hold her back, I think. Yeah.
That's going to hold her back because if we're going by the Clive Davis rules, you have to have a strong voice, interesting melodies that aren't too off the wall. It needs to be a radio friendly single. I didn't get that out of this. I barely got the Clive Davis pop structure.
Mhm,
Like most of these weren't even like intro, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, chorus. They were missing like one or two components of it and just kind of like got stuck in a loop and they would ride this line. So I'm like, there's not a super creative musical instinct saying, what if we did a crazy bridge here? What if we had this breakdown? And again, it doesn't have to be crazy, like, let's get the fucking theremin in here,
mhm.
but just like a vision for what the music could be too much of this felt like what the musician Addison Rae can be. And in this moment, she's not really a musician. Like, she's a pop star. As loath as I kind of am to give her that, because it just doesn't feel earned. And who am I to sit on my little toadstool on my podcast and cast aspersions on the successful phenomenon? But I can't go along with it and endorse it just to go along to get along. I'll cop to, like, I just don't get this one, because I just personally don't think that there's that much meat on the bone. And I don't think any of that makes her a bad person or a hack. I think it's her first effort. Like I said, to quote this other person, it took Sabrina Carpenter 5 albums to get there, to get an identity. So, all the best to her. We'll check back in. We'll see what happens. I'm going to give this album a 2 out of 10.
Oh man, I feel like the only reason you didn't go 1 is because just in case there's one worse, you needed to leave some space down there.
And because I don't think it necessarily represents like creative bankruptcy. I found the music itself, the album itself, that unenjoyable that I could not go too high. But I didn't want to like make it a 0 and totally ding her, because it's nothing against her as a person. And again, it's early. So we've set the bar low. It would be hard to go lower from here for me with Addison Rae.
Yeah, not the standard. She was probably looking to start at the beginning of 2026, but this is where we're at. And folks, if there are new albums that you want us to listen to, and we get one of these out just about every dang week. I can't even imagine how many we've done at this point. Well over 250 albums, I would assume. We're over 400 and something videos now, so a good chunk of that stuff is all album reviews, folks. You can go back and see any one of them you want, anyone you want in the future. And Alex, where are they going to find all of those?
We have stuffed all of our content into a deep, dark YouTube rabbit hole filled with playlists and dusted with video treasures that you can watch with the whole family. Nana might even put her best teeth in for this one. There might be coffee and cake. You have no clue. It could bring your dad back from the store from buying cigarettes. It's been 15 years. Could he come back? Mathematically, I've crunched the numbers. It's not impossible. Considering his age, your age, the driving distance between here and Reno, Nevada, it could happen. It could totally happen. But it won't happen unless you put out the beacon and you put your best foot forward and you give your family something to dig into, something that they can be proud of you for. He or she has taste. They made me think about the world in a new way. That niece of mine, that grandson of mine, it doesn't matter what your relationship is to these people, love them or hate them, you have a duty to educate them. And that one's free for you, Addison. You can use that next time. YouTube.com/C/out on that line. It's all there, folks. You give the video a thumbs up. You hit the bell so that you get notifications. Make sure you're subscribed before you do that. It'd be crazy to do it the other way. And then you have to leave comments. Leave angry ones on this. Do I not get it? Does Jeff not get it? Are we both wrong? Straight white men are hardly ever wrong or problematic. So don't come at us, okay? Don't come at us. Positive vibes only in the comments at youtube.com/C/out on that line.
Yes, I love it when you really stumble into a great one. And you certainly did there. And folks, until next time.